rate. We've got our physician workforce, our nursing workforce are doing a great job, and we've seen pretty significant increases in our patient experience scores. Now, in addition to workforce, of course, space is an issue. We really learned that during COVID. We got hit so hard, and I don't know if any of you have been over at the hospital in the emergency department recently. It's not just how many rooms we have, it's all the stuff we're using in healthcare. There's so much equipment, so many supplies, and we just need more space for the stuff as well. And so, let's see, it must have been a year ago, the hospital's board of directors approved us to move forward with the largest expansion of Fairchild Medical Center since the hospital was built. So the new hospital was built in 1997, and we're in the process of building a new building, about 25,000 square feet. On the first floor, we will have a new emergency department. And so what this means is we will almost triple our space, which will provide more capacity for patients. We'll have private rooms. We'll have the rooms set up so, for example, it'll be better situated to accommodate behavioral health patients, some of the social situations that we find ourselves in, trauma. I used one example the other day where I had several law enforcement personnel were exposed to a chemical, and we had to decontaminate. And right now we have a pretty complicated process. We have to pull the hose out in the parking lot and hose people down when we decontaminate. It might be warm water, it might be cold water, who knows? But we'll have a room for decontamination, some of the disaster situations, those kinds of things. Right now, my staff don't have a break room or restroom in the department, and I'll have more space to better accommodate staff, which helps with the recruitment, with the retention. And so we're really excited about this expansion project. It will give more space for emergency services. We're actually going to move the lab from the hospital up to the second floor. The reason this is important, well, number one, we wouldn't have a hospital without a laboratory. So next time you're in the laboratory, take the laboratory staff. They're kind of the clinical heart of the organization with all the tests that we run across many modalities. And so we're going to move them up, but that gives us more space we're going to do an expansion of the surgery department. And so we'll have an OR expansion. In the old emergency department, we've got a number of new services we're going to bring online. I should keep track of how much time do I have?
6 more minutes.
Okay, I got to keep moving here. So anyway, super excited about the expansion project. Just really makes me, and I could go through almost every service line and talk about the good things that are happening at the hospital. We're excited about that. Grateful for staff and how hard they're working to take care of the community. Left some cards. If you want to know more about the expansion, there's a card with QR code. We're doing weekly videos and things that you can follow. Go to the hospital's website. There's a lot of information on the expansion project, but really big deal for us. It's going to really set the stage for many years to come. Now, as I mentioned, kind of as we hit our stride right now, we've got some difficult climbs ahead and some pretty high hurdles to clear. And I don't know how many of you have kind of run that 400-meter race and had to jump over some of those hurdles, but I feel like all of a sudden I'm not sure how I'm going to get through these next few hurdles. And let's talk a little bit about a couple of things that just financially, and it's not just a hospital issue, right? This is a community issue because it's not just the private sector, it's not just hospitals, but I've had multiple meetings in the last couple of weeks with folks from different counties, county representatives, other types of providers, and everybody's concerned about the reduction in resources that we're going to see both from the federal perspective as well as the state perspective. Now, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, federal act that was just passed, is going to significantly reduce monies coming into healthcare. And regardless of your political position, the reality is October 1 right now, so 75% of my patients are either Medicare or Medicaid. So 3 out of 4 patients. October 1, Medicare reduces their reimbursements to the hospital by 4%. So that's going to be over $1 million a year. That's going to hit October 1. We're going to have to figure out 2026 how do we accommodate, that kind of reduction in terms of the budget. So reductions to Medicare, and at this point there are no exemptions for small rural critical access. It's going to hit everybody, that 4% reduction. The big ticket item on the Medicaid side. So of course we're concerned about those who are going to lose, enrollment because of some of the various requirements and what have you. And I've been doing this long enough that I was around when the Affordable Care Act passed back in 2014, and we had about 10,000 people in Siskiyou County that were covered under Medicaid, Medi-Cal. Right now it's at almost 18,000. So at one point we almost doubled it. We almost got up to 20,000. So almost 100% growth in coverage, Medicaid, for those who qualify. And those numbers are gonna start to come back down a little bit. And working with the local health plan, partnership health plan has the contract with the state to administer Medi-Cal in Siskiyou County. Our contracts are going to be pretty solid there, at least for this next year, so no reduction directly to the Medicaid contract. But every state has a supplemental program, a provider tax program. California, we call it the Hospital Quality Insurance Fee Program. And it means millions of dollars in supplemental payments. And we're significantly underpaid by by Medi-Cal and by Medicare actually. But this makes up some of that. Now, we're probably not going to know for another 6 to 12 months what's going to happen with California's provider tax program. Right now, this 2025 calendar year version of the program is at CMS, at the federal government, for approval. We're watching that very closely. The state is watching that very closely, and we'll have to see what happens with that Program 9, California's Hospital Quality Assurance Fee Program. Okay, so how much time do I have left? 2 minutes. Okay. A lot of people have talked about this Rural Transformation Fund as well, $50 billion over 5 years. We don't expect a lot of money from that. That's $10 billion a year. Half of that's going to be split up evenly among 50 states, regardless of how many healthcare entities they have. And then half of it's going to be up for grabs. We're going to watch that pretty closely, see what we can access, but I don't expect, that's more of a distraction at this point, and I think it's going to actually be a solution for us. Now, the second really major hurdle that we need to clear is a state-imposed hurdle. Governor Newsom he basically has said healthcare expenditures need to be reduced, and in my opinion, I don't want to talk about the real reasons we see the cost that we see, but they're saying hospitals, we don't want to talk about labor, we don't want to talk about the underpayment of Medi-Cal. But we just want to talk about what the hospitals charge, and we're going to limit how much you can increase your charges. And so as of June, they have now basically said hospitals can't raise your charges more than 3.5%, even though drug costs are up 10%, labor's up 6%. It doesn't matter. But by the way, we haven't really decided what the penalties are or what the sanctions are. We'll get to that down the road, but you're expected in 2026 to comply with this 3.5% rate increase. So our organization is trying to figure out how do we deal with that, because that's probably, if I were to reduce that increase from 5% to 3.5%, that's probably $5 to $7 million in gross revenue to our organization. My margin right now is 1%, 1.5%. My net income year to date is about $600,000, $650,000. So that's a lot of money. So we're going to have to decide how quickly we're going to comply with that. But OVA is going to be a pretty sizable hurdle, and the OCA, the Office of Healthcare Affordability, is also going to be difficult for us locally. We have no plans to change course. We're going to stay the course and continue to serve the community. Again, lots of good things happening, and we'll figure it out one way or another. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Allan Carver will speak next.
Well, good evening. Thank you for being here. I'm Allan Carver. I'm the County Superintendent of Schools. I was sworn in January of 23, so I've been on the job for closing in on 3 years now. Prior to that, I got to spend 4 years as the Deputy County Superintendent, and prior to that, I had the pleasure of running Scott Valley Unified right here for 5 years as the superintendent. I was an administrator for many years and did a lot of good work on the unification here in Scott Valley. So really happy to be here to visit with you a little bit about the status of education. For our county, we have 24 school districts and about 34 schools scattered across the county. All of these school districts have their own elected boards and they hire their own superintendents, right? So they are locally governed by the folks in that community. The role of the Siskiyou County Office of Education is to support their work. There's a number of, and we break this into kind of two categories, if you will. There's kind of oversight responsibilities that the office is assigned. We support credentialing for teachers. We have some fiscal oversight that we have for school districts. We support the Williams settlement, where we go and make sure that the facilities are in good working order, that there's curriculum for the students, and that the credentialing on behalf of the teachers is sound. So we do these sort of things, support curriculum adoptions for all school districts, and these are sort of kind of the baked in compliance things that we do. We also have a part of it that is identified by how the school or the district is performing. So if they have student groups that are struggling in ELA or math or attendance, or maybe have a high expulsion rate, things like that, they can be identified for differentiated assistance. And we step in. We have a process where we work with the administration and a small team to review their data, to look at what's producing those outcomes, and to generate ideas to make improvement there. So these are all things that are required of our office. We support foster youth, homeless students, and there's a number of other things within the organization that are required by the state of California. As an elected official, I serve as the employer for everyone in my organization, in the Siskiyou County Office of Education. But there's also an elected board. The board and I have two separate, distinct roles. The board is its own entity. I do not work for the board, I work for the voters. So I work for all of you. The board has some roles around interdistrict transfer appeals and some other appeals, things that happen between school districts, and if those get appealed, it goes before our board. So it's like a 7-member board representing 7 different regions of the county, and they have a very limited scope of work that they do. They also approve the budget that I develop in collaboration with the chief business official at the Siskiyou County Office of Ed, although they don't have line item veto power. So they can kind of give me a sense of how much money they want me to save, those sort of things, and make sure that, I will get their approval. But it's not their role to determine what sort of programs the office offers, what sort of assistance we provide schools, what sort of help we give individual teachers, and those sort of things. So then there's this whole other part of the organization that is services and supports that we provide in relation to the needs of our school districts. So we ask for a lot of input from folks because we seek to be responsive to their needs. We seek to be supportive of the educators across the county. We seek to do this in innovative ways, in efficient ways, and to make sure that we're stretching every dollar to make a significant impact with the schools that we're supporting. And things such as nursing services, school psychologists, speech pathologists, OTs, adaptive physical education, lots of specialists within the realm of special education. We use these folks, we hire these folks, and then we put them in kind of itinerant roles where they will go and work in numerous school sites, because each individual school can't justify a full-time school psychologist, but they may need a couple days a month, sort of thing. So we have a lot of that sort of staff that's employed by the County Office of Education and really fills in the gaps on a lot of these specialists for our school districts. We employ counselors, we employ wellness coaches that go out and do this sort of work. We have a science team now that's grown from 1 person to 4. We have 3 outdoor educators and a dedicated science coach. These folks actually are delivering supplemental science lessons in classes, organizing field trips, creating great hands-on science all across Siskiyou County. The team also organizes an outdoor school run right here at Kidder Creek outdoor camp. And of course, it's been a highly successful program, very impactful for kids, and the community's really appreciate it. We have recently employed an emergency preparedness director. One of the things that we've realized in education is that we own a lot of this county. If you look at the 24 school districts, we have land all over this county. And we have a tremendous amount of buildings, millions and millions and millions of dollars in facilities. And as you can imagine, with the fires, the smoke, the issues that we've been recently having, we have had substantial impacts to some of these facilities. And we want to improve our ability to be prepared fire-wise and to be able to respond to emergencies effectively, to train staff effectively. And this has always been a thing in education where we just can't ever do enough of it, right? We want to prepare for the bad things that can happen in schools, but in the region, and we're doing some good work in improving teacher knowledge, helping them build proper drill schedules, and ensuring that schools are doing the right things to prepare for whatever might come their way. We also go after a lot of money on behalf of our schools, and some recent efforts there is our state level community schools funding. We've formed a consortium and did a lot of this grant work on behalf of the school districts. So those that qualified for these monies entered into a consortium. So we went and got the grant. We did a lot of the back end work on that. And what we'll do is bring those monies in and then distribute those to the districts for them to utilize as they see fit in their communities. And then we'll also be doing a lot of the back end reporting and work on those dollars. So it basically just helps our schools think about program and think a little less about compliance and funding and all the things there on the back end of that. The County Office of Education also has an early head start. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. That's a federally funded program. I know that's one of our topics tonight. We run a state preschool, and we have a very significant expanded learning program that brings in about 2.1, 2.3 million specific to after-school programs and programming that goes beyond the 180 days of school. This is 30 days during the summer or intercession time that schools are open 9 hours a day, providing enrichment, nutrition, physical activity, some instructional support, and those sort of things. So our schools really used to operate 180 days. Now we operate 210 days a year. So I'm kind of going, I appreciate Maggie. She sent us a few questions to answer. So I've told you a little about the agency. I've told you a little bit about the services and things that we do. The next part is a little bit about who do we serve. And I mentioned 24 school districts, 34 schools. We have 5,600 students in the county. And that has been dropping over the last, well, it's been dropping really probably for 25 years. But to give you some recent perspective, in the last 10 years, we've probably dropped more than 500-600 kids. So that's pretty substantial, more than 10-12% of our student population. So in regard to some of our funding, the nice thing about education is that we have a variety of funding sources. Okay, so there's some local funding. The bulk of it is state funding, right? Because we're mostly a state mandate to provide an education system. There's federal funding, and then there's also other nonprofit entities that have grants and offerings that we can compete for. So between all those things, we have, our funding is extremely complicated because we have so many different funding streams, and each one of those streams has restrictions on how you can use that dollar, and then of course allowable expenses in the ways that they'd like to see you use that dollar. So it is quite a web to put together. In regard to some of our most recent changes in the big beautiful bill, and I think one of the questions, and I appreciate it, was, has there been any recent impact? And it specifically used that term. Anticipated services be impacted in the future or currently. I can share this one impact. We had early Head Start dollars that were frozen. We were at the end of our 5-year grant cycle. So we're getting ready to apply for another 5-year grant. You get the money, and then you report on it every year annually, and you continue to get your allocations, right? So it's a 5-year cycle, but it's based on your original application. So we were seeing a lot of other Head Start programs that were in their 3rd or 4th year continuing to get funded and being told they will have their money. We were not getting that message. So I had a whole team of early childhood educators in early Head Start that, while I waited to the last possible moment, in new laws here in California, if you lose a grant, you've got 60 days to lay these people off and those sort of things. So we unfortunately had to lay these folks off. We were told that we had the money eventually at the end of July. We brought back everybody we possibly could, but we'd lost 25% of the staff. So, as far as an impact, it's a clear impact of just freezing the money and forcing us to make tough decisions, even though it finally came around. So another one that I'm going to briefly touch on, I see my 1 minute, thank you, I might steal one extra one, is Forest Reserve funding. This is $1.9 million that comes into this county for specific to schools, and our county colleagues and county government receive quite a bit of money for roads and those sort of things in addition to that $1.9 million. But currently, this has traditionally been a bipartisan effort, and even though there's a bill ready to go to the floor, it just has not been brought to the floor for vote. So currently, we are anticipating losing that $1.9 million, and this can mean anything from 10 grand to our smallest schools to a couple 150,000, 250,000-ish for some of our larger school districts. So it's real money. Lastly, if you looked at the federal funding that we bring in, there's 5 titles, and so these are different restricted funds, have specific asks for each one of the dollars. We bring in about $2.76 million to the schools in this county. So to give you some context, if the effort is to just shrink those dollars, that would be an impact. If the effort was to have less funds, a lot of us like that idea in the spirit of efficiency, but we continue to hear, well, we might shrink the number of funds, but also shrink the amount of dollars. So I guess all of this would be in new budget bills from the federal government. But what we have on the table to be discussed is another $2.76 million. So when you put those two together, you're, I think it's 4.6 in that range. So it's real money for Siskiyou County. It's real jobs for your neighbors, for your community, for your children and grandchildren. And lastly, I just want to thank you all for being here. Can I get a raise of hands if you've worked in education, retire, or still in education? Look at all those educators out there. Thank you so much for your service and your contribution to your community.
Thank you, Allan. Casey is up next.
Hi there, can you hear me? Excellent. My name is Casey Glaubman, and I live in Mount Shasta. I am the Executive Director and Education Coordinator for the Friends of the Mount Shasta Avalanche Center. I am also an elected member of the Mount Shasta City Council as of last November, so still learning my way through all of that, but lots to do there as well. And as you'll see, that my two roles, while they do not officially coexist, there are some overlapping issues between the Avalanche Center that affect the Avalanche Center and the city as well. Just a little bit of brief history of getting into it. Was living out in Utah for a long time after college. Moved out there to be a ski bum. Still a ski bum, frankly. But was in a couple of near fatal avalanche accidents. One of them squarely my own fault and due to my own ignorance. The second one, I had started to get a little bit of training because I realized that was a deficit. Was not actually my fault, but I realized even more so what had gone wrong. After those kind of close escapes, I ended up moving back out this way and have since spent a lot of time learning where I went wrong in those times, and then have now been given the opportunity to kind of impart some of that to other people. So for those of you that are not familiar with the Mount Shasta, or I guess, how many people here are familiar with the Okay, excellent. And how many people have gone to some of our winter events? All right, cool. Fewer. Well, we'll change that this winter. No worries. We got a lot of them coming up. But we've been around for a little over about 25 years as the nonprofit, which supports the Avalanche Center. It's a public-private partnership between the Avalanche Center itself is run by the Forest Service. We have our director and a team of forecasters. And then I run the nonprofit, which does all of the education, so we get to teach a lot of classes. On that note, last year, I was just going through the numbers, we actually taught over 400 people in our Avalanche classes just last winter alone. And because of the fundraising that we do, we're actually able to offer all of those classes for free, which is pretty cool. I could have used that about 20 years ago. So I mentioned that our funding is a mix of donations that we get every year. We do a lot of fundraisers. If you're familiar with Giving Tuesday, coming up here at the end of November, early December, that's kind of our big kickoff. We also receive grant funding. We have a number of different grants, but historically our main one, it's an interesting one, and recent events have kind of shed some light on how it actually works for us. Prior to about 8 months ago, I didn't have to think about it nearly as much. But it's a state grant that is then distributed to the Forest Service, a federal entity, which then comes back to us. Kind of weird and roundabout. Normally didn't matter, except this year when all federal grant, or nearly all federal grant funding was frozen, that affected us as well, even though the money was already earmarked. Anyway, it's a whole thing. So we're still kind of dealing with the fallout of that. It looks like most of that will get distributed. The timing of it has gotten a little bit wonky in terms of being able to actually operate within our season. We are hopeful that that should get resolved in this upcoming season, but as with many other things right now, it's a little bit in flux. Even without that grant funding, if it doesn't come through, we are confident that we will still be able to maintain most of our services. We have had to hold off. We were in the process of starting a scholarship program for youth who want to go into professional avalanche forecasting. We've had to scale back on that just a little bit due to some uncertainty. Now, to speak on that uncertainty, we have a team of forecasters. One of them left to take another position with another department. Good for him. We wish him well, of course. We are currently unable to backfill that position. So what that's going to mean is that this season, with the staff that we have, we should still be able to provide 7-day-a-week forecasts. We do provide a daily avalanche forecast that comes out about 6:30 a.m. every morning. So we are hopeful. I might have to start taking on some of those. Not really how I want to spend my early mornings, but we are hopeful that we will be able to continue doing that throughout this season. What we did see, and we're not sure how this is going to affect things. So for those of you that are backcountry skiers, snowboarders, snowmobilers that are out there, if you follow weather discussions, there's been a lot of talk about cuts to NOAA, the weather forecasting, weather organization here. We started to see that almost immediately, actually. Back in February, there was always a very robust discussion portion on NOAA's weather pages, and that kind of stopped happening nearly immediately. it's unclear if that was like one person that was in charge of that just got cut, but that went away pretty quickly. When all of this started to happen, we were near the end of our forecasting season. As you are probably aware, there's not a lot of avalanches happening in late April and May up on Mount Shasta. It can, but we're well past our danger season. So by the time the cuts started really happening, we were not really in a position to gauge what kind of effect that's actually going to have on our ability to forecast accurately. So we will be finding that out here pretty shortly in the next 4 months or so when we start up those daily forecasts again. And as of now, we're just kind of a wait and see. One nice thing that we actually have an advantage versus some of the other avalanche centers is that part of our funding, what we do with that is we actually maintain 5 independent weather stations. And these are actually publicly available on our website, but they're up. We have a couple on the mountain. We've got one over at Ash Creek Butte. We've got on the west side of I-5. But anyway, we've got these and they give you real-time data. So we can utilize what we see on there in order to still put out that avalanche safety product for our users. Now, I did mention that we had a little over 400 people in our classes. We also see, last year we saw somewhere in the range of like, it was, I'd have to get the exact number, 250, 300,000 visitors to our website annually. So those are people looking to check the daily forecast. A lot of it is, of course, locals that are sitting drinking their coffee and just checking out what's going on. But we also have a lot of folks coming up to the mountain. We actually saw during COVID a weird influx of people. It was a lot of the country was locked down, and for whatever reason, Bunny Flat was some of the busiest we've ever seen it. And it really hasn't slowed down. So, you know, we've got Mount Shasta used to be, I would say, significantly more summer-based tourism. And while it's still, there is definitely still a summer tourism economy, winter recreation and winter tourism has definitely increased over the last few years. Now, the last couple of years, in particular last year, one thing that we saw, and this is going to touch on something that Allan mentioned as well, with those cuts to the Secure Rural Schools program, and the cuts to some of that funding that comes in both for the schools as well as plowing and other municipal or other services throughout the county. The Public Works Department will get hit with that. The Public Works Department, the county is responsible for plowing that road, the Everett Memorial, up to Bunny Flat last year. If you're in Mount Shasta, you probably were aware of this. If you're not, you might not have been, but the road was closed for a lot of the season. We had some equipment malfunctions there. It was overtime, staffing, just a whole bunch of things kind of came together to make it so that the road was closed for about 50 to 60 days last year out of a season, which is a lot in a winter season, particularly in an economy that depends on those people visiting. There was a recent economic impact study done by an independent auditor, and this is actually available on SORA's website. If you want to check it out, it's an interesting read if you're into that stuff. But it showed that the town of Mount Shasta alone loses between $5,000 and $20,000 a day in revenue that the Everett is closed. So 50 days of closure. On the low end, we're looking at $250,000. On the high end, significantly more than that. And that doesn't even necessarily account for all of the people who are working in the service industry. You've got your servers, your bartenders, people cleaning in Airbnbs, people that are affected. Trips get canceled. A lot of people coming up from Tahoe, Bay Area, down from Portland, that kind of thing. They didn't come because the road was closed. Anecdotally, I spoke to a lot of people who either themselves or had friends that had to cancel a vacation coming to town. And so while at the end of the day, it's not people's health, it's not their education, it is recreation, it is a good reason that a lot of people choose to live in a given area. And, you know, while it might not be directly related to staying out of the hospital, for a lot of us, It is actually, and mental health, being outside is crucial for a lot of folks. And I think we see particularly where I live in then just sort of the circles that we run in, it really affects people when they're not able to get out and do those things. So we are very hopeful. The county actually, we've been having really good talks with them, and they are committed to really stepping up and making sure in a partnership that we are going to be able to keep that open. Thank you. I see that there. Yeah, I don't have a ton more. Okay, yeah, well, anyway, be happy to answer any questions about what's going on, but come out to our events. They're going to kick off in early December, and then we'll have sweet events all year long. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Jim is up next.
Hi, welcome. We're going to take a little change of direction here. These other guys have been talking about agencies and how things are impacting them that way. I'm going to talk about an industry and how we're being impacted. And I'll speak for agriculture, but you need to know I'm speaking for me. Agriculture is huge. It's diverse. It doesn't always like itself. You have to understand that there's competition that happens inside agriculture. There's a lot of things that go on. So keep that in mind when you're hearing from me. This is my story. I am a rancher here in Scott Valley, about 6 or 7 miles south of here down the road. My mother-in-law is here with me this evening. She lives on the ranch, Lynn Bryan. And I live there with my wife, Katie, and 2 of my adult boys. That's not a great thing, but it's kind of how it ended up. It's going to get better. My one son is working as a teacher at the junior high school here in town, and we're very excited for him. My other son needs a little bit of time to get his feet under himself, so we're going to be in good shape. We're on the ranch that my wife's family was on and has been for, we're the 5th generation. My kids are the 6th generation on that ranch. My kids help me on the ranch. They do work daily. I have a girl and 2 boys. My daughter now is married, but she continues to come back and work on the ranch and has interest in that and will participate, I believe, going into the future. I'm going to need to look at my notes a little bit. So on the ranch, we raise livestock, cattle, and sheep. We raise hay, grain, seed crops. We've done sunflowers, carrots, grass seed, a lot of different kinds of seed crops. But the main thing that we raise is kids. And we raise those kids to come back and do it again, the next generation. That's been going on for a while now, and we want to see that continue. I don't know how familiar you are with Siskiyou County agriculture. It comes as a surprise to a lot of people to realize that almost half of our income in the county from agriculture comes from nursery crops. It's strawberry plants and raspberry plants. Behind that is livestock at about 1/4 of the income in the county due to agriculture. Field crops, which is grains and hay and everything else, low at 13%. Vegetable crops at 8%, and something that has really changed in the not too distant past is timber falling at 7%, which is very low compared to historic numbers. So agriculture has changed in the county, and it will continue to change over time. Some of the agencies that I am involved with are one of our local irrigation districts, Scott Valley Irrigation District, which is a county entity. As far as financial impacts from any agency, from any government agencies at this point or anything, we have not seen any financial impacts at Scott Valley Irrigation District. I also sit on a groundwater advisory committee that reports to the Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which is a Siskiyou County entity. That's one that's pretty contentious. We spent time in this room last night for 2 hours, and some of you were here with us. And some of those meetings can become pretty heated. There's a lot going on from the regulatory aspect, not from the federal government, but from the state right now, particularly in relation to water and some crop protection concerns, some spray concerns, but right now our biggest concern is water. The other group that I sit on that I sit as a board member is the one second. Water Master District, the County Water Master District. And that's a pretty cool entity that we have. Water Masters should be dealt with at the state level. And when the state came and said that Siskiyou County needs to be water mastered, the price was going to be prohibitive. And they set up a program with the county that allowed us to provide our own water master service under their authority and following their rules. And that's a program that's going very well. The main thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was the Farm Service Agency. Have you heard of the Farm Service Agency? Probably not, the FSA. It's a entity that falls under the USDA, Department of Agriculture. It's a federally funded program that provides services for family farms and ranches, serving beginning farmers, minorities and women, tribes and youth, as well as family farms and ranches. They all go together. They try to service smaller scale, not large corporate ag, is what happens. They provide assistance during disasters. There's conservation programs, some marketing programs, and other sorts of things, as well as credit and loans for new farmers or farmers who need some help with that. It's a pretty awesome program that's been going on for a long time, and it changes names every 10 or 15 years, and they get together with some other group, but it's been going on that way for quite a while. I sit on the county committee for the FSA, and we did right during the time that the world was getting dozed, we did have some issues. Our staff was told that their lease, they couldn't continue to lease the building they're in. They were gonna have to move to a different building. Everything was a mess. We didn't know if we were gonna have funding. We didn't know if we could retain staff. But the move was going to happen no matter what. So we packed up all the equipment, all the computers and printers and everything, sent it over to the Forest Service office, and then found out, no, you don't have to move. It's okay. But we didn't have anybody to bring the equipment back for about 2 weeks. So the staff was kind of hamstrung there for a while without use of the equipment. We were really concerned about losing staff, and we did have somebody who was concerned enough that he found another job and went somewhere else. And then we found out that we needed to rehire that position. He's now coming back as a temporary employee. And once he does his temporary status, it will hire him again as permanent staff. So from a federal standpoint, we have had very little concerns. There is some promising talk at the federal level with agriculture, with trade, with a few things that are out there. We haven't seen that here in Scott Valley. I haven't seen that happen in Siskiyou County. But we'll see. We always have to remain optimistic as to what might happen in the future. Our biggest problems that we're having are with the state of California right now. And they're mostly water-related issues, I would say, in the Scott and Shasta Valley. There's a few other issues, but water is the big thing right now. And we're trying to come up with ways to maintain agriculture and adapt, find a way to do more with less. It's difficult. We're working at it, but it's tough at this time. The other things that are really hitting agriculture hard right now are input costs. We pump, so electricity, equipment costs, fertilizer, seed, crop protection material, everything you touch is very expensive. At the same time, the markets are not great except for cattle. Cattle are awesome. Very happy to have cattle right now. So that's keeping us afloat. But guys that are locally that are just farming are having a really tough time right now. We're fortunate in that we live on a ranch that is paid for, and we can pull our horns in and try to cut our expenses and survive. Folks that are trying to make it on leased land and borrowed money for expensive equipment right now, it's tough. Times are really tough. So the other thing is the markets. And markets are poor across the board. Grain crops, you listen to the guys in the Midwest, they're just dying back there. The only thing that's keeping people alive is subsidies and programs. And that's a whole ball of wax that's difficult to even address. There's things that happen when you go down that road. I know that that's what it takes to keep some of those guys going, but it's tough. Another problem that we have is that ag is getting old. I'm a young guy in ag. That's a bad thing. We need more kids, we need more young people. And we're trying to encourage that, but it's difficult to encourage smart young people when they watch me do what I do. That's tough. That's tough. And so I'm going to figure out which one of my kids is the least smart. The other problem that we have with ag is that we are way, way too good at it. We're very efficient. We do research all the time. We're learning to do it better, and we just oversupply markets. And I don't know, these are complex problems that are going to take some work to try to figure out, but that's happening here locally. That's part of our problem that we're having. So thank you for your time. I hope it was helpful. If you have questions, let me know. Thank you.
Good crowd. I've been looking this way, not this way. Thanks everyone for being here. Great group of speakers. I'd like for everybody to give them another big applause. We're going to open up to question and answer. And what I would like for people to do is come up on this side, so we're not in the middle blocking people. Come up on this side, form a line, and then come up one at a time. And if we have questions, I guess I should say. I'm going to read a little statement I put together as an organization, SCA put together. So once again, I'd like to thank our speakers for a great evening. We've heard a lot of insightful information tonight. We're going to open the floor for the question and answer session. I'd like to introduce a few guidelines on how we can all get the best of this opportunity to ask questions, get answers from our expert panel. When asking your questions, keep in mind if you're wanting speakers to clarify information, address a specific concern, or elaborate a little more on a previous point. It's always beneficial to remember the importance of politeness and respect in our interactions. when communicating with others, whether in person, online, or through any other medium. Maintaining a respectful demeanor fosters positive relationships and creates a more pleasant environment for everyone involved. Simple acts of courtesy, such as using polite language, actively listening, and acknowledging different perspectives can significantly improve the quality of our exchanges. This approach not only reflects well on us individually, but also contributes to a more harmonious and understanding community. If you're wanting to ask a question, we're going to have you form a line here in front of me, and we will take as many questions as possible as time permits. We are going to be ending the Q&A at 10 minutes after 8, so we've got a little bit of time here to do this. This will allow time for cupcakes and networking and continued conversation, bringing the evening to a close. As moderator, I will be holding the mic and helping you get your questions understood and answered. We're limited on time, so we're asking when you come up to the mic that you are ready to present your question. Please introduce yourself, tell us where you live, and if you'd like, you can tell us your business or organization that you're with. Please also indicate if your question is for a specific speaker or for the entire panel to answer. We understand that some questions may need a little context or preface so that the speaker can fully understand your question. Please limit this introduction to just a couple of sentences or a few thoughts. Then, keeping your question concise and relevant will help facilitate a clear response from the speakers. If your time at the microphone becomes a little lengthy, I may ask you to conclude your remarks so that we can get as many questions answered as possible. And to quote from Hamlet, brevity is the soul of wit. Okay. People would like to come up in line and ask questions? The floor is open.
Hi. I'm Karen Ziegler of Mount Shasta, and right now I'm interim director at the College of Siskiyou for programs for students with disabilities. Actually, I have two questions. One is for Casey, if he has anything that he could add about the city of Mount Shasta and any impacts that he sees happening there. And also for Allan, if you're seeing any impacts on special education. I understand that the workability programs have seen cuts, and I know we're seeing impacts on the Office of Civil Rights. And so you see that those impacts are going to be significant.
So in regard specifically to workability and our transition programs, we are working with the Department of Rehab, and we actually think we're going to be able to get our funding increased. So we've been using two different funds to do some help with special ed and employ some kids, and we've had a vocational person in Wairika that's been doing some of this. So we're excited about the opportunities to work with DOR to use one fund and actually expand those dollars. It'll create a little bit of simplicity for our program, and the idea that we would employ these vocational techs at our school sites and have 3 of them instead of one person trying to do so much for our county. So we see some shifts there, but those are self-imposed and working in collaboration with one of our funders in a healthy way.
Sure. So touching on the effects in Mount Shasta City itself, you know, a lot of our programs, particularly the grants, are already earmarked, so we're not super concerned with the stuff that's already ongoing. It remains to be seen whether or not our ability to secure grant funding going forward will be impacted. It's likely that it will. Some of the things that we are going to see issues with, particularly with the passage of recent legislation, are going to be similar to what other speakers have touched on here with the rural healthcare losing out on funding. That's absolutely going to affect us just as a city. Obviously, there's private entities, but we're all serviced there. And then, you know, I mentioned it's Avalanche Center and the city itself, but not being able to fund things like the road, that affects us as a tourism-based economy. Our TOT tax from folks staying in hotels, short-term lodging, that kind of thing. We definitely see a large impact in that. So just in our tax revenue, which actually affects the county, since a bunch of that gets passed up to the county as well. So I think in the immediate, I think that we're likely to see that. We did see this summer, we haven't gotten the final numbers yet, so it's hard. Some of our numbers we don't see until a little bit after the fact. But just I can speak to, I'm pretty close with a lot of the guiding industry in town, both river and mountain, that kind of thing. So we did see a decrease in like international tourism and stuff. So when we see those final numbers for the summer, we'll know a little bit more, but hard to say exactly.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Enlow. I'm a third-generation water well drilling contractor in this county, now retired. My son has the business. My question's not about water, but I hope Jim can give me a little input. I was really surprised, even though I've been around the ag aspect in this county for a long time, that half of the income of the county in agriculture is from seed plants. And seed plants, the particular ones you mentioned, require a lot of labor. And I didn't hear anything about how that might have been impacted. I don't know about Scott Valley, but boy, I know Butte Valley is likely impacted. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I'm happy to speak anytime. I just don't know much. I do know that it does require a lot of labor to do the nursery crops. And I also recently heard that a significant amount of labor is, it used to be migrant labor, but now it's people who live on site. And so I think a lot of those people were less impacted in them being folks from the community. I think that has changed a little bit with some of the labor that goes on over there. There's also, when you can't find labor, you mechanize. And so I know there's a lot of mechanization that's going on too over in that part of the world. But I'm speaking from over here about a place that's pretty foreign to me over there in that side of the hill. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Ann Scanson. I'm from Mount Shasta, and I have a question for Mr. Carver. I was just curious about the drop in student number that you referenced, and whether that's due to a shift in population or a shift to homeschooling, charter schools, and do charter schools get a lot of state grants too?
Thank you, great question. So when we talk about students across the county, we have 2 charter schools, and so I fumbled on that one. I should have said 24 school districts and 2 charter schools, both of which are authorized under the Siskiyou County Office of Education. So when I say 5,600 kids, I'm including the students that are served by the charter schools. I'm going to speculate a little bit in regard to our overall student population and our numbers declining. In the last 15 years, and I'm sure most of you have lived in the county for the last 15 years, if we start to think back to the level of tragic fires we've had from Happy Camp to Weed to the Klamath River area to Hornbrook, and you just go on down the list right here in Scott Valley, we've lost a lot of homes. I mean, I was just working with somebody from Happy Camp, does some tremendous work down there, and the statement there was, they lost 40% of their housing in the town of Happy Camp. So when we think about, like the fire a couple years back in Weed, there was a settlement, right, with the mill that started the fire. So there's a lot of people who got insurance money or maybe got settlement money, and did they choose to build their house back in Weed, or did they choose to leave the area? And I don't know the numbers on this, but my hunch in just driving the county and having lived here a long time is I don't see if we burn down 250 homes, I only see 50 or 60 or 70 built. And I see this time and time again. And so, yeah, we all love this place. That's why we live here. And I think it's, we're looking for our young people to keep coming up with the wonderful ideas that bring people here, that want people to live here, to create businesses, and to grow our economy, because without an economy, we don't have families and we can't serve children. So that's my speculation as to why some of the declining enrollment. I think we've got plenty of room in schools. We're ready to serve more kids. We're growing our employment side of the sector. People are coming back into education with some enthusiasm, and our COVID hangover, so to speak, has passed. So we're ready to see people move into our community.
Good evening, I'm Allan Kramer. I live in Etna, and I own a bit of timber on the west side of Etna. So I'm kind of interested in the ag prospects here, and give Jim another opportunity to talk. One of the things that I found interesting was one of your last comments, Jim, about we've gotten too good at what we do, and so we're maybe overproducing. Now, if you're in the business of making widgets and nobody wants to buy all of those widgets, then typically what you do is you find something else to do. And I know that you have tried alternative crops, and I'm interested in how that has worked out for you, both in terms of the economics of it and how that might have affected water use also. Also, are you getting assistance from organizations like FSA?
No assistance at this time on that. It's too new and too weird for anybody to wrap their head around. Thank you for asking that question. I will not be able to answer all of it right now. So if you want to go to Mary's for a few beers after, we can do that. And anybody, no. That is something that I'm looking at. One of the concerns that I have is that in this valley, we tend to grow a lot of commodities. Commodities are low value, even if they're high quality, and you can buy them anywhere. And I don't want to see us doing that in the county. I would like to see us producing a value-added crop of some sort. So seed crops make some sense to me in that we have isolation. There's some things that we can do here, I think. I'm open to anything else, but I don't know that growing a commodity is the best idea, a low-value commodity. So that's why I'm trying a few things out. I have the luxury of being able to do that, and I'm a little dumb. So, I'm willing to do it for a while. I don't know if it'll catch on. The other thing that I think we could use in this area is processing for some of these things. If we could clean seed, if we could do that kind of thing here, it's wide open. We're looking for grants to maybe put together facilities so that we could do that sort of thing and employ more people, take a crop from a lower value crop to a higher value product when it leaves the valley or leaves the county. Does that help?
Thank you.
And my name is Mark Williams, and I live down by Etna. And I have a question for Jonathan. Considering the drop in Medicaid funding, and that will continue to drop, I guess, what's your crystal ball idea about what's going to happen to the Etna Clinic in regards to that?
Oh, thank you, Mark, for that question. So I don't have a lot of answers right now in terms of how severe the Medicaid cuts are gonna be. We're gonna have to kind of just see how that goes. As I told you earlier, in working with the health plan, we don't expect any cuts to our standard contracts this next year. It's all about this federally approved supplemental payment that we may or may not get. But that said, we have worked so hard over the years to build capacity, and I think Advent Clinic's a good example of that, where we put up a new building, and I can tell you that one of the areas that I personally have focused on over the years has been primary care capacity. When I took over as CEO, we had between the old Advent Clinic and the one that was across the street from the hospital, we did about 3,500 visits a year on the primary care side. That was about 2008. We hit we were almost at 75,000 visits last year. We have seen so much growth in terms of our rural outpatient clinics across many specialties, but in particular primary care. And this isn't a time when a couple months ago, I don't know how many of you saw, but Shasta County declared a public health emergency due to physician shortage in primary care. It's extremely difficult to recruit and retain physicians to rural. Some of the recent stats as they've surveyed some of these residents that are just finishing up, one of the last ones I saw was only 8% of residents that are finishing their training want to be in a community of less than 50,000. And here I am charged, because you're in this with me, right? When we recruit these providers and their families to the community, I need your help to welcome them and to help keep them. But it's very difficult recruiting. Now that said, we've had a lot of good progress recently. Look at what we're doing for the kids in our community. You want a board certified pediatrician to take care of a child? You come to Fairchild Medical Center. You want access to dental care for that child? You come to Fairchild Medical Clinic. Behavioral health. I've got 5 providers now in my behavioral health suite. We just welcomed 2 new internists right out of residency, Dr. Kelly Barrett and Dr. Daniel John, just joined us August 1st. And we have worked so hard, Mark, to build that primary care capacity. I know Dr. Wilson just retired. Both Dr. John and Dr. Barrett, again, internal medicine, are going to spend some time in Scott Valley. And so we'll have to see, how that goes. But we've really built primary care capacity, and we have no plans at this point to start to pull back on any of that. So good progress, and at this point, we expect to maintain that in terms of primary care capacity.
No, my name is Michael Stapleton. I live here in Scott Valley, and I've got a question for Joe. And a question. Seems to be a popular guy tonight. I know a lot of producers whose hay ends up, primarily alfalfa, ends up in China. And with this tariff wars going on, if they end up slapping the tariff on that hay, is that a major concern? Are there other markets? Or how do you think that could affect the ag production in this valley? Thank you.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Thank you, Michael. I've thought about that. About 15% of the hay in the state of California is exported. A big part of the reason for that is because we have containers that come here, shipping containers to the United States and to the ports on the coast. And that hay can be pressed, put back in those containers and sent back to China for less money than it costs us to send the hay from here to the port. Which seems kind of nuts, but it's a great way for us to make a few dollars going back the other way. The Chinese hay market has become very sophisticated. They used to take hay. They didn't know. They just, whatever it was hay. Now they're extremely picky, and they came up with this is a situation that might be a little controversial, but they don't want to take any genetically modified alfalfa at all, any Roundup Ready alfalfa. In my opinion, Roundup Ready alfalfa is a good tool, a good technology, and it seems to be safe and working well. They use that exclusion of Roundup Ready alfalfa as a tariff, and they've been doing it for a long time. I think that's one of the first things that we're going to see go away, and that will open up a lot of hay to go to China. So I don't know. I'm not in the negotiations. It depends upon how it goes with those guys. I do like the idea of sending empty containers back full of what I produce. Works for us pretty well. So yeah, we'll see is where I am on that. Thanks.
Any more questions? Oh, look, we have a question right here.
This is for Jonathan, and just out of curiosity, I just read, my name's Maggie Shepherd, and I live in Mount Shasta, and I lived in Fort Jones for 11 years, and I'm always very happy to come back. But I read a couple days ago that the Glenn County Hospital is closing soon, and that's not that far away, and so that was kind of worrisome. And just out of curiosity, I'm wondering, is that like an outlier? What puts them in a different camp than Fairchild? I know I read something about they miscalculated how many miles they were away and they lost money for that. But
That's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Yesterday I was in Reading. I had a chance to sit next to Supervisor Jim Yoder from Glenn County, and Jim and I talked quite a bit about it. That medical center in Willows, let me say first of all that they've struggled for a long time, right? For many years, at least a decade or more, and I've watched it. Just small enough, it's just a struggle to recruit docs and expand their service line and do the things that they need to do. Their closure is not directly related to this One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So most hospitals are on the prospective payment system in terms of how they're paid. But in the late 90s, the federal government created a designation for rural hospitals called the Critical Access Hospital Program. And this program basically, to meet this, to qualify for this, there's 3 criteria. One, you can't have more than 25 beds. So I don't know how many of you remember, but Fairchild Medical Center was actually built in 97 with 33 beds. And so when we were approved in, it was like 04, 05-ish, as a critical access hospital, we actually had to suspend eight of our beds to get to that 25-bed limit. So that's one. 2, you can't have an average length of stay of more than 96 hours. And 3, you can't have another hospital within 35 miles. Enloe Medical Center is 33.5 miles from Glenn Medical Center. And their designation came up for review, and the federal government, CMS, basically said, we're going to drop you from the critical access hospital program. They appealed it, and it was not upheld. And I'm not privy to what, other than just the mileage, why that happened. Talking to Jim, the community's really, really concerned. They're right now just trying to, you can imagine they're covered by one ambulance. They have one ambulance, right? And so if that ambulance has to head to Chico, basically folks in that area are uncovered in terms of first response and 911. And so they're hustling to try and figure out, because I think it's like October that they close. They're hustling to try and figure out a solution. But they've struggled for a long time. It's not directly related. It may be indirectly. I don't know. It was the critical access hospital designation that was kind of up on that straw.
Thank you. Okay, now we can say one more question, any more questions? I want to say thank you to the audience for being here, but also for coming up with some great questions and engaging with our audience here and the speakers. So let's, I know earlier we gave these folks a round of applause, but I think we need to give ourselves. And looks like we have ample time for cupcakes, so I'm gonna turn this over to Maggie, who's gonna kind of wrap things up.
Hi, I'm also a part of the Siskiyou Community Alliance, and like I said, it's part of this is the second forum we've had, and we always find it very valuable, and thank you for your participation as well. So in this event, we are a very, very grassroots organization. This literally happened out of a conversation between a couple of us. And then the next thing we knew, we were hosting these informational forums, and we needed a name because we needed to purchase insurance for the building, and then the train just sort of took off. And so we're in the process of evolution. On your agenda, you have a couple of QR codes. One is to take a survey, and we really read every one of them. And if you have comments, constructive criticism, ideas, anything, we want to hear from you. If you don't do QR codes like I don't, there's a paper survey you can fill out in the back. And you can also, there's a QR code, I think, that accesses our website. You can sign up to get, we're also doing a newsletter now, as of last week. And so you can sign up to get that via our mailing list. We'd also like to thank the other people. We try to make this a real community effort. Jay Martin, who's kindly recorded, brought all his thousands of dollars worth of equipment here to record this. The cupcakes were paid for by Stan and Lauren Miller of Mount Shasta and made by Sweet Treats, I believe, in McLeod. And there's about 75 people here, and there's 100 cupcakes, so that's about 1 1/3 cupcakes. And even if you're not going to eat a cupcake, you should come look at them because they're really kind of cute. The coffee is decaf, so feel free to drink coffee. We also sourced our printing from pages locally down in Mount Shasta. And I think, did I forget anything? Oh, donations. Jonathan will really appreciate this. This is our only revenue stream, literally. It is. And so all donations are, we're not a 501c3 yet. I imagine that's coming soon. But so any donations are gratefully appreciated so we can continue some of this work. And we'll let you know when we can harvest 503.